Stuff gets moving here. All right, there we go. Technical difficulties can kill us. Anyway. All right, so we've got a lot of stuff we're going to get into today. I've got full SEC and ACC stuff that we are going to talk about today as far as on the football front. But I kind of wanted to start with basketball. And, South Carolina plays tonight at home against 10th-ranked Alabama, or 11th-ranked Alabama, I'm sorry. The Tide coming in after a loss at Mizzou. And, when you really stop and look at it, South Carolina's kind of got their backs against the wall a little bit here. So we'll figure out what's going to happen with that matchup. But I have to get to the possibility of canceling tournaments. I think that's something that's going to dominate the sports scene here in the next next week or so. Let's go out to the phones and welcome into the rundown. Good afternoon.
Hello, Rob. It's Bobby and Casey.
Bobby, what's up, brother?
Well, I know I'm a regular caller, and I'm going to break the basketball and college football talk since we're in SEC Gamecock country.
Yeah.
I just want to get a jab in.
Sure.
What was Mario Lemieux thinking on as a general manager?
I don't know, brother. I laughed when you tweeted that out. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Hey, they haven't had a goaltender at Philadelphia since he won the Conn Smythe when they lost, I think, to the Oilers.
Yeah, long time ago.
And I know all your listeners are saying, what?
Yeah, just a moment of hockey talk. There you go, buddy.
And one more thing.
Sure.
Jim Rutherford, I was checking out the goals against and the saves percentage for right now, the goaltenders right now.
Right.
Jim Rutherford traded Marc-Andre Fleury away to he let him let him go when they had their draft.
Yeah.
So there's a great goaltender he let go away. So, I mean, I guess, even though they were rivals, I just sent you a clip of 1989 when the Penguins Flyers played. Mm-hmm. I guess somehow Lemieux and Hextall, even though they were rivals, became friends in retirement.
All right, Bobby. I
know you're going to get over to basketball. Hey, just one thing. I think South Carolina's going to get spanked hard by Alabama tonight.
I like South Carolina in the points, man.
So if you're looking at the betting side, but I don't know, man.
All right,
Alabama lost a tough one in Missouri, right?
Yeah, but Alabama's a fraud, though. They can't if they don't hit the 3-point shot, man. They're not really worth anything. That's part of the modern game of college and NBA basketball. You got to be able to hit it from the outside. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but they have games where they go cold, so we'll see.
Then so Frank Martin's got to inspire his guys to make good shots and go hot from the outside. Then
maybe
they can squeak it out. What's the line? Who's favored by how much?
I got to check. I think it's 6 points. I think South Carolina's a 6-point underdog.
So. All right, Rob. Thanks for letting me get on and talk a little bit hockey with you.
There you go, man. Appreciate it. Bobby joining us from KC. Yeah, I like hockey, so let Bobby talk for a second. But getting back to that South Carolina game tonight, they play Alabama, team that's leading the conference right now, although they come in off a loss to the Mizzou. Alabama's a very interesting team in that they can blow you out. And I mean that. If they're hitting their 3-point shots, they can blow you out. Herb Jones is a guy to look out for tonight if you're heading down to the Colonial Life Arena here in Columbia. Coach Martin said that he in his mind that Herb Jones is the SEC Player of the Year. He averages about 11 points, about 6 rebounds, but this is a guy that was playing with a fractured wrist basically and had a cast on it, was shooting free throws one-handed. So you're not gonna question his grit because he's definitely got that. But a bigger story may be on the horizon. And there's lots of internet rumors and stuff that are floating out there. But, we have the basketball tournaments coming up. The college basketball tournaments, as far as the conferences go, are on the horizon. So the SEC League tournament is supposed to be held in Nashville March 10th through March 14th. Now, the writing is on the wall here. The NCAA has said we are going to have the entire NCAA tournament all in one state. Basically, they're making a bubble, okay, for the NCAA tournament. So when you step back and look at it, if they're doing that, then why in the world would any conference take it upon themselves to gather teams together at different sites? Whether it's, I'm not sure where, I know the SEC tournament is in Nashville. I think the ACC tournament is in Greensboro. I can't remember. But the big thing with that is that why would they do that? It doesn't really make much sense. And here's the thing that could affect the teams that are there. If you are the number one seed in the tournament, like let's say you're Alabama or Mizzou in the SEC, we'll use them first of all. They're going to make the tournament regardless. I've seen projections that have them as number 2, number 3 seeds. Okay. Being a number 1 seed is nice, but being a number 2 seed, number 3 seed is still great. And the reality is that none of it really matters. What I mean by that is that, is there really a big difference between a 16 seed and a 15 seed if you're a 1 versus a 2? It's all going to be played in the state of Indiana. So unless you're Butler or Indiana, who's probably not going to make the tournament anyway, it doesn't matter. Getting zoned where fans can come close to see you doesn't matter. Everything's in Indiana right now. So I think in the next week or so, a lot of the conferences are going to quite possibly set it up where we're just not going to have a conference tournament. We're going to crown our champion at the end of the regular season and then go from there. Now, for teams like that are on the fringe there, you could use South Carolina as a perfect example. They haven't had the opportunity to play very many games because of the COVID-19. So the big problem with that is that they're not going to have an opportunity to make some noise in the conference tournament. You're taking away, what was it, Georgia from years ago, where they were barely 500 and won the SEC tournament, that kind of thing. Conference tournaments are great, but in reality, they're a money grab. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. The conferences have to make their money to succeed, I guess, but in the end, they're just a money grab. Last season, Florida State was the king of the ACC. I mean, they were scheduled to play Clemson. They probably were going to beat Clemson before everything got shuttered for COVID. When you look back at that, if you're looking at it from an objective standpoint, nobody's going to argue that Florida State would have been crowned the ACC champion. Same thing goes for this season. However the season standings finish up, that's your team. That's where you go. I think it's going to hurt some of the quote-unquote bubble teams, but in the end, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, here's some of the other things too. I read something about this earlier today. In 2019, the NCAA had $868 million in TV and marketing rights for 2020, rather than get the expected $827 million from CBS and Turner for the rights to televise the hoops tourney. The NCAA instead received $113 million. An event cancellation policy also paid the NCAA $270 million. They distributed $611 million to its members for the school year for the 2019. Last year, it fell to $246 million. That's $365 million in NCAA distributions that could be getting gone if there's not an NCAA tournament. If you take your number 1 seed, in the ACC right now, I believe it's Duke. Or I'm sorry, not Duke. I believe it's who's up there at the top? Is it Virginia Tech is in the mix? Whoever is up top. One set where something happens like what happened with North Carolina, where they were all excited about beating a Duke team, or was it whoever won the game this weekend? I think North Carolina won over Duke. I refused to watch that game, by the way. Anyway, one bout with COVID, the Duke-Miami game last night the North Carolina matchup with Miami was canceled because they had the issues where they had people on video partying it up, doing what college kids do. Justin says it's Virginia online. Thank you, sir. Anyway, you're going to end up with a mess, an absolute mess, if COVID spreads through the conference tournament and you end up taking out a team that, may have done well up until, tournament time Friday night, Maybe they drop their game because, let's be honest, a lot of top seeds don't care about the tournament. And, oh, wow, through contact tracing, you can't play in the NCAA tournament. If that's something that is across the board, you're going to have a mess. Just from the numbers there, $365 million. That's for disbursement to universities for last season. You just didn't get. The NCAA, I'm sure, is leaning hard on some of these teams or some of these conferences and telling them, take your conference tournament and we'll do it next year. If you want to respond to that, you think that they should cancel the conference tournaments? 803-978-1832. Now, let's not make this about whether you believe in COVID-19 or not, because I've had people talking to me about that behind the scenes here. I don't want to make this a political show. I don't like talking politics. We don't need to get into all of that. Let's just talk about the sports end of it. Do you think that they should cancel the college basketball tournaments as far as for the conference tournaments? For me, I think you're always playing for a championship in the NCAA tournament, and I think in basketball it's all about that national championship there. Now, I know some people are going to tell you these are the same people that drag the SEC flag or drag the ACC flag, but that conference championship is really important. You're still going to have your conference champion. It's who finishes first in the regular season. It's the same thing. We're just cutting down on the risk of whether or not people can have to deal with COVID. Now, and here's something else too. And the Howard men's basketball team has canceled the remainder of their 2020-2021 season. So you already have teams that are completely opting out of the year. Let's do the best that we can, in my opinion, right now to get behind the horse a little bit and say, you know what? Before we get ourselves into something that is going to be a problem, we know the NCAA is going above and beyond to basically create a bubble in Indiana. I don't know if they're constructing a full bubble. It's going to be cold there, to be completely honest with you. But the reality is that if they're going to put that together, you shouldn't be, quote unquote, violating the bubble beforehand. Let's have that week off. Serious. Have that week off. Give the young men and young women time to get themselves to a point where, all right, everybody's tested, everybody's negative, which they're doing all that anyway, but not having the opportunity to mess it up heading into the college basketball season. So that's my plea today to the conference commissioners, who I'm sure listen to the program. I think the SEC commissioner probably hates me because I laugh at his at the way that he lets Alabama just run roughshod with scheduling and everything else. But in the interest of, let's make sure we have an NCAA tournament, calm down a little bit, and let's make sure we have that instead of your conference tournament. Now, I know some folks are going to say, what about the smaller tournaments? Yeah, I get that. Growing up as a kid in Murray, Kentucky, the OVC tournament was the absolute biggest thing ever. The Ohio Valley Conference tournament, they played that some years at Murray State, which is where I lived close to. And I love that kind of basketball, man, where you've got the big, what was it, Murray State and Austin Peay playing each other every year when I was a kid. And those were the two that were battling for that title. Murray State was generally really good, but Austin Peay, the Governors, were outstanding as well. So I know we're going to miss that. But you know what? We've already given up so much. We need to have a chance for a team like, what was it, Loyola Marymount with Sister Jean, who's 101 years old and still has prayer meetings with the team, even though their coach says she's under lock and key. Wasn't that a great story? Let's try to have that. We'll still crown your conference champion. You could still hang that banner, whether it's in Racer Arena or in the arena that the Governors play in for Austin Peay. Hang your conference championship banner. It's the same thing to me. In fact, I get frustrated because it's like, let me make sure I understand this. If I play 18 games in the SEC and my team goes 16-2, and everybody else is 3 games behind us, which may end up being what happens to Alabama this year. You know, in my mind, they're the SEC regular season champion. That's good enough for me. I don't care if you get hot over a span of 3 days, and then you're going to crown yourself the SEC champion. I don't get all that, man. The regular season basically means nothing. If you can play well in March, that's all that matters. Do well enough in your non-conference. Go 500 in conference play. You can win the conference tournament and be in the NCAA tournament. It's a mess. But in the interest of all of that, let's slow down a little bit, just a little bit, and we can have our NCAA tournament, the 2 best days of the year in as far as sports go. Or yeah, I guess it's 2. I mean, I like super regional Thursday and Friday too, as far as college baseball, because I'm a college baseball nut. But the 2 days for the NCAA tournament are outstanding. And we should be able to have that this year. Now, I know you should probably do it at a socially distanced spot, but having the ability to have that is going to be great for the country. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. And from a financial standpoint, that's going to be better too for the NCAA and its teams. Having a conference tournament in Nashville where none of the fans are going to be able to go anyway doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can respond to that at 803-978-1832. I do have football talk. In the next segment, we will talk about all these wonderful notes I put together, questions and answers. Do you hear that? Listen to that. I mean, it's just a mountain of notes that I've put together. And look at this. The folks that are watching on YouTube and Facebook and everything else, I mean, I'm highlighting and all this stuff, looking like a complete idiot at like 1:30 in the morning. My cat's down there looking at me sitting by the fireplace like, what are you doing? Yeah, that's what happens when I get on a roll in my head here. And then I'm so silly, I didn't even start with it today. Full football talk when we come back. You're listening to The Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Appreciate you guys sitting through my my basketball diatribe there. We could talk about your team, Marcus. Do you want to do that? Tell us who your team is. Or if you're an Oregon fan, we can talk about Oregon. I mean, they generally suck really, really bad, but we could talk about that. We could talk about how Marcus Mariota, who, by the way, you don't even put your real name out there. You have a fake name. It's not like you're the Marcus Mariota that played at Oregon. So there you go. Oh, you think I bought a Fox Sports poster? That's cute. You're hilarious. Let's show out Mr. Dum Dum here. All right, as you can see, to show Dum Dum, there is the big Fox Sports banner that's behind me. And my board. If I can flip that around. There you go. You can see that. There's the board that I work on. All of the notes that we put up in here. You know, just showing that you don't really have any sense. I do like hockey, Alan. Well, we could talk about the Bucks and how they had to go out and get an old man to bring them a championship. So we could talk about the Bucks getting a guy that steals crab legs and is a racist or is a rapist on their team. There's your team. I don't know what that guy's problem is, man. He worries me. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. Full football talk here the next couple of segments as I've got off-season notes for each team in the ACC and the SEC. And you know what? I think I'll start with the SEC stuff here, even though the ACC stuff I've managed to file on top here. But SEC talk first as we roll along here. We'll start with Alabama. The big thing for Alabama heading into the offseason, we know that Bryce Young is the number one player in the class of 2020. He takes over as the starter. People thought that he was going to be the guy that would unseat Mac Jones and play last year. Mac Jones wasn't having any of it. So Alabama's going to be loaded regardless. John Mechie III will be he's going to be leaned on a good bit here as they replace the Heisman Trophy winner Smith and Waddle. Both of those guys are headed to the NFL. Also, the Steve Sarkisian effect. This is a big deal because you've got him leaving and Bill O'Brien coming in, and he's going to call plays now. So we'll see how that works. It's going to be I don't know if it's going to be a completely different offense, but you got to respect what Steve Sarkisian did. And I question the intelligence of Bill O'Brien because this is the guy that single-handedly burnt the Houston Texans to the ground. So maybe he can be buffered a little bit here and maybe keep Alabama where they're supposed to be and maybe get his head right because he was a brilliant offensive mind at one point. All right, so then we go from there to we have Arkansas next up on the list. You know, the big thing with Arkansas is they ended up with they don't have Felipe Franks anymore. His college career is over. 10 seniors did decide to return to Arkansas, and that's a good thing to have. The big thing now is can they get to bowl eligibility? That's the big thing with Arkansas now, as they're going to have to figure out the quarterback situation and then go from there. All right, so some other teams that we'll look at here. I've got Ole Miss up next. The key word for Ole Miss is the defensive line was just terrible. One of the worst in the country. If they can improve on defense, they're going to have Matt Corral back. They do lose Elijah Moore, but Lane Kiffin can coach that offense. So there you go with that. Big improvements have to be made on that defensive line if they're going to be any good, in my opinion. All right, so we moved to Kentucky. You know, Kentucky's team last year, they were supposed to be the team that was supposed to bite people in the leg, and they really didn't. They've had issues at quarterback, it seems like forever. So Bo Allen and Auburn transfer Joey Gatwood will battle for that starting job after Terry Wilson's hit the transfer portal. I don't know if I think he's chosen his school, but Touchdown Terry's not going to be there anymore. They do have a new defensive coordinator in Liam Cohen, and we'll see how that works out for them. They've got some holes to fill in the front seven, but the big thing is who's going to be the quarterback for Big Blue. We'll have to check on that. Mississippi State, they finished 4-7 last year, the first year under the Pirate. Here's the big thing with them. Who is going to be their quarterback? You know, they have freshman Will Rogers. He played late last season. And if he can wiggle that job away, I mean, I think they're basically setting it up where it's his to lose, to be honest with you. But the big thing with them, their offensive line has to improve. Allowed over 3 sacks a game last year. And that's something that with the timing and stuff that comes with the Pirates offense, they've got to get better protection on that line. So there's that. Improve the offensive line, figure out what you're going to do at quarterback. Here's the other thing with this too. We go from Mississippi State to Georgia. You know, Georgia is a very interesting case in that they have 16 starters that could return next season. JT Daniels is the biggest one. The big thing, though, is can they get to a point where they don't have a funk like they did last year? And that was because they couldn't figure out who their starting quarterback was. It looks like Daniels will be that guy. Here's the thing with them, though. They're going to play Clemson at the beginning of the season, and that's their best game on the schedule. The rest of their schedule is hot dog water. It's really bad. So it's pretty much September the 4th or bust for Georgia because their schedule is just not that great. JT Daniels. Yeah, exactly. As they tell me online here. The next one is LSU. They could return as many as 19 starters on offense and defense from my notes. And the offense was better at the end of the season. So that's the big thing with LSU, returning a lot of guys. They do have this whole, I don't know if it's sanctions, I guess, that could be coming their way after some allegations against Geist, the running back that they had. That could bite them in the leg. We'll see how that works out for them there. But LSU finished 5-5 last year, but it was just kind of an up and down season. They went to Mizzou and lost. Not exactly what you want when you were the defending national champion. Getting blown out by Mississippi State at home, that's not exactly something that you want to hang your hat on as well. Also, since we're talking about Mizzou, we'll do them in a second. Let's do Texas A&M. Texas A&M, of course, finished 9-1 last season. Their only loss to Alabama. Lots of folks talk about, hey, they lost Kellen Mond. That's going to be something that's going to affect them throughout the season. Yes, you got to figure out who your quarterback is. I get that. But they lose 3 starters from that offensive line. They had a lot of seniors on that offensive line. Looks like Haynes King may be their quarterback. But the big question for the offseason for them is, obviously, protecting the quarterback. All right, so Mizzou, Eli Drinkowitz goes up to Mizzou, and there were talks that could Mizzou win more than one game? You know, that was the big thing with them and Arkansas, you know, because those two played each other. And lots of people were talking about, hey, they could be that could be the one game where one of those teams gets a win. Well, Mizzou finished 5-5, beat South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and LSU. Games that you know, they should have won, to be honest with you, except for the LSU matchup. That's the only one that really stuck out. But they did also beat Kentucky. The question for this season is that can they get that extra win? Meaning, can they finish second in the SEC East? And it's not really that far-fetched. If Florida falls a little bit, Mizzou will be right there lipping on their ankles. Their defense is improving. They do lose some guys. Nick Bolton is a linebacker that's going to make somebody happy in the NFL. I mean, he is just a lights-out guy that can do a lot of things for you. Plays well in coverage, plays well against the run, and they're going to miss him at Mizzou. Florida they finished the season 8-4. The big question for them, they've got to replace Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts. I don't know if Eric Gilbert is going to get to play this season until they officially clear him where he can actually play. If so, he's going to be, you know, something that could really help out. But Emory Jones, I don't think, is Kyle Trask. But the talk around the Gatorland down there is they expect him to be like Nick Fitzgerald was for Dan Mullen at Mississippi State, so a guy that could actually run the ball a little bit too. Can he get 1,000 yards? If he can do that, that can make Florida a very interesting team. Interesting, to say the least. Of course, we've got South Carolina too. As I've got my notes on South Carolina, the big thing with South Carolina is that it's just all about building some structure right now for that first season. Can they get to bowl eligibility? Also with Tennessee, I didn't write much about Tennessee because Tennessee is going to be a disaster as they deal with sanctions. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Vanderbilt's hoping to win one game. There you go. Our look at the SEC. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you want to join us here on The Rundown, this is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Marcus, if you want to get out of your mom's basement and come and punch me in the face, my address is 219 Halling Drive, Columbia, South Carolina. I've been hit by lots of people, and I'm not scared of you. All right? And I get paid to do this. You get paid to sit there and type stuff on the YouTube channel. That's what you get paid to do. If you really want to come and punch me in the face, 219 Holling Drive. Write it down. Columbia, South Carolina, 29229. Once you hit me, though, I'm going to hit you back. And that's not going to work out well for you. Don't come at me idly threatening me, dude. You have no clue what I am or what I'm capable of. People threaten me, I just knock them out. And if you do hit me, I'm going to get back up. You probably can't hit worth a damn anyway. So stop with your nonsense over there trying to troll people and act like you're some big Billy badass. You're going to punch somebody. You need to calm down before I call your mom and tell her to take your internet away. You don't want that happening again. You can't get on TikTok. Leave me alone with that nonsense. And did I mess up JT Daniels? Did I call him JC Daniels? That's my bad, Alan. Sorry about that. I feel bad about that if I did that. I'll go back and listen to the tape if I screwed that up. That's funny. You know, it was hard to find stuff on as far as football goes when I was trying to do this was Syracuse and Vanderbilt. Like, you can't find anything on Syracuse and Vanderbilt. I was trying to do some research on that. Couldn't find anything. It was insane. Yeah, I messed. Did I say JC Allen? If I did, I apologize. Spectral Tiger has a good point there. No JT Daniels. Okay. Oh, it's JT Daniels cry. Oh God. See, I can't say that on the air. People will be like, "What are you talking about comparing this kid to Jesus?" That is funny. Mm-hmm. You guys rock over there on YouTube, by the way. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the folks watching on the Fox Sports page, too. I never said I was bright, Alan. You're hilarious. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. In my hands, I've just went over the SEC offseason notes. If you have questions about that, 803-978-1832. I'm sorry I didn't have much on Vanderbilt. I know I should care about Vanderbilt. My wife is an educator, and she likes to, I guess, kind of follow Vanderbilt simply because they're the smartest kids in the SEC. Okay. We can follow them for baseball. That's coming up. What are we, 10 days away from South Carolina and Clemson doing their thing? Yeah, it's going to be fun with that. Anyway, full SEC stuff we've already done. ACC notes really quick here. We'll start with Notre Dame. Yes, I know that Notre Dame is not in the conference anymore, and I understand that people are going to be like, well, but they're not playing there, blah, blah, blah. They play a significant portion of the schedule in the ACC, so I thought we'd have some notes on Notre Dame. They got 5 offensive starters coming back, including Kyron Williams. The biggest thing is going to be replacing their quarterback, Ian Book, and it looks like Wisconsin transfer Jack Cohen. I think it's Cohen, C-O-A-N. I think you pronounce it Cohen. We'll get the start at the top of the heap there in the spring. On defense, they've got an All-American candidate in Kyle Hamilton and 5 or other people returning. So we'll see how they do when their defensive coordinator, Clark Lee, is now coaching at ding, 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 Vanderbilt. So maybe some transitioning there on defense. All right, so Miami is an interesting team here. They went from a team that couldn't score against Louisiana Tech just over a year ago to probably one of the more exciting offenses out there. The big thing for them is, can they stay? Is the health of De'Aaron King. If he comes back and he's healthy, they did get some help on the outside with Charleston Rambo. I still think they're obviously a big tick below Clemson. I think they're they have the opportunity. They could challenge North Carolina to go to the ACC championship game. So there's that. NC State, when you look at this NC State team, they're interesting to, when you really look at them, they went 8-4 last year. Wait, what? Yeah, they went 8-4. A lot of people look at that and they're like, how did that happen? Yeah. Dave Doran won 8 games for the third time in 4 years. So they had close losses to Miami and then Kentucky in the bowl game. And they theoretically could have had a 10-win season. I know former host here, Jonathan Reynolds, loves to hear me talk about NC State. If quarterback Devin Leary can play, he's got a boatload of starters returning. They could be a team that could surprise somebody. Spectral Tiger with a great point online beats somebody they aren't supposed to. They could do that this year because they've got a ton of guys coming back. Daniel Joseph led them in sacks, 6.5 last year. He returns. The defense gets any better. I'm not saying that they're like, they're going to compete with Clemson, but they could hurt some people's feelings. How many people remember them went 8-4? Boston College, by the way, went 6-5 last year. Nobody really expected much from them. It all starts and ends with Phil Dracovic. He returns with Zay Flowers. Flowers almost hit 1,000 yards receiving last year. And with Boston College, the one thing that I always remember about Boston College, they always seem to have a nasty offensive line. Just nasty, regardless of how good the team is. You know that you're going to get beat up on the offensive line with them because they always seem to have just a bunch of guys that play really, really well there. So we'll get to Clemson here at the end of this here, but let's go to North Carolina first. Sam Howell returns. That's a big deal. The Tar Heels lose their top 2 running backs, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, their top receiver in Diami Brown, and their top tackler, Chaz Surratt from last season. Yeah, they played pretty well in the Orange Bowl, losing to Texas A&M 41-27. I think they're going to be fine this year, but they've still got to replace a lot. Sam Howell had puts up great numbers in the fourth quarter. I was looking at this last night. Over the past 2 seasons, he has 19 touchdowns against 0 interceptions in the fourth quarter. That is getting it done during crunch time. So, yeah, interesting there with Sam Howell. Will he have somebody to throw the ball to? That's going to be the big thing there for North Carolina. Pitt finished 6-5 last year. With Pitt, the big thing is that with them is that their receivers and running backs need to catch the ball. Their quarterback is returning. Pickett is his name. Yeah. Kenny Pickett. It seems like he's been there forever. Participated in senior day activities. He's coming back again, folks. Threw for 2,408 yards, even though he missed 2 games with an ankle injury. Pickett is coming back. They dropped a nation-leading 36 passes in 2019. Didn't get much better. 29 drops during an 11-game season last year. So they need to hit the old, whatever the thing is, the jug machine. Have some balls thrown at them, man. Work on that a little bit. I'm sure Coach Narduzzi is working on that. Virginia Tech, the big thing with this year is I almost feel like Virginia Tech is sort of like South Carolina was last year. Can you have they had Will Muschamp, and everyone was like, man, I think it's the same way with Justin Fuente this year. Fuente is only 19-18 overall since 2018. 1 game over 500 at what was once a very proud program in football. Not so much anymore. The offensive line does return 3 starters. He does have Braxton Burmeister back at quarterback. If he doesn't finish over 500, Virginia Tech is going to be looking for a new coach quick. We also have Virginia. That's my next team to look at here. They got to find a new starter at running back and some receivers. Tony Poland and Terrell Jana have headed for the NFL. They lost 4 linebackers. So obviously it's kind of a rebuilding season there for the Hoos. My interesting team to look at here, and I know people think I just have an obsession with Wake Forest and Dave Clawson. I mean, they should put me on the payroll there as much as I talk about them down here in Columbia. But Wake Forest finished 4-5 last year. They only lose 2 or 3 starters and 10 players. This is the most interesting stat. Could be as old as 23 or 24 years old next season. So you've got a lot of guys that have been in the system for a long time. And Dave Clawson knows how to coach. He said, quote, "I'm probably as excited about this football team as I've ever been. That's not to say we don't have challenges or holes. Yes, they've got some holes, but they return a ton of guys and a ton of older guys. So look for Wake Forest to be well coached next year. Teams are going to have to out-athlete them a lot. And if Sam Hartman can get over what he did in the bowl, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, where he threw, 4 interceptions in 12 plays, he's got to get over that. If he doesn't get over that, then there's going to be a problem. But if he gets over that, they're going to be fine. They really are. When we come back, I've got a couple more teams in the ACC we'll go over, including Georgia Tech and Louisville, Duke, Florida State, and Clemson. We'll get into that when we come back. This is The Rundown. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, you're right about that, man. They didn't really – they won all the games they were supposed to, and I guess you should expect that, but I just don't like Dave Doran. And I went to ACC kickoff, and we were on Radio Row, right? And they made the mistake of a couple of years ago of they normally bring like 3 coaches onto the floor, right? So you've got this whole big ballroom and all the radio stations that are there, okay? So they bring Dave Doran out, and Dave Doran came out with, I think, the coach from Virginia. All right, well, Dabo Swinney comes out like 10 minutes later, and he's making his rounds. They've got people that bring them as you schedule them for their interviews, and okay, this is where you go here. You've got 9 minutes. Go, right on down the line. Well, when Swinney comes out and Doran sees him, Doran just wanted to basically get the hell out of the ballroom. He didn't want anything to do. He's just looking at him like just this look of absolute, I don't like you. And you could just feel the negative energy between the two. So I think a lot of it, they haven't won a game against Clemson in like 10 years, but still, you get the vibe. Those two don't like each other. And then when we interviewed Doran, he's just like, he just seems like he just does, especially when he found out we were from South Carolina. He didn't want anything to do with us. It's kind of interesting, to say the least. I'm trying to make the trip to SEC Media Days this year, too. It's just the ACC Media Days are in Charlotte. The SEC Media Days are in Birmingham. And it's much cheaper for me to do it if it's in Charlotte than it is to go all the way to Birmingham, because you got to fly, and then I got to check all the equipment. They can't beat Clemson. That's a great callback there, Spectral Tiger. Can't beat Clemson because of the sideline laptop. Remember the towel thing where they were taking, was it Kelly Bryant's towels? That was a mess, too. What a mess. What an absolute mess. All right, here we go. Final segment. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. Got a lot of stuff that we're getting into. I was telling folks during the break about NC State and how it's kind of a rivalry with Clemson. We didn't have the Textile Bowl last year. And Spectral Tiger brings up sideline laptops and Bradley Chubb stealing towels from Kelly Bryant. Yeah. A lot of bitterness in that rivalry. It's one-sided, but I tell you what, man, you see North Carolina celebrating over winning Duke. If when NC State beats Clemson again, they may riot in the streets up in Raleigh-Durham. All right, so as we roll along here, the rest of our ACC, SEC off-season notes here. as stuff that I looked at for each team that you got to kind of look at if heading into the spring. Of course, if you missed the SEC notes, you could check out the podcast. Download it anywhere that you can find your favorite podcast, including the iHeartRadio app, iTunes, Spreaker, whatever. However you buy, sell, steal, get your favorite podcast, wherever. Look for the Rundown with Rob Sanders. Check it out there. All right, so we went over the Demon Deacons. Where am I at here? Oh, there we go. We go from that to we've done Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. I've said on the show, and I'm wondering, I was a guy that really liked Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, and I'm like, man, he's really going to turn Tennessee around. Yeah, that did not happen, to say the least. But I've talked up Jeff Collins because I thought that he would come into Georgia Tech and they'd have to get rid of that system that they had there. But it seems like last year they were kind of building a little bit, and this year you're hoping they can get over the hump. But in my opinion, well-coached teams don't have a lot of penalties. So me going out and saying Jeff Collins is doing a great job at Georgia Tech, when I see this one stat, it makes me want to go back and edit this out of everything else that I've ever said about Jeff Collins. They had 8.9 penalties a game last year, tied for the worst among Power 5 teams. So for Georgia Tech, they won 3 games last year. I'm willing to bet if they could cut down those turnovers a good bit, they probably could have won 5 games last year. So Georgia Tech needs to cut down on the penalties. I do like Jeff Sims, the dual threat quarterback they've got there. Jameer Gibbs, the young man there, the freshman last year, did some stuff for them as well. They got to cut down on the penalties. 8.9 penalties a game is just too much. All right, so Louisville, the next team on the list here. They do bring back Malik Cunningham. All 5 starters return on the offensive line. The defense was hot dog water. They got to figure out what's going on with the defense there. Too many busted assignments. Linebackers in the secondary are going to be the big thing for them this season, figuring out how to plug up those holes because what they were doing wasn't working. All right, so we move from there to FSU. Now, you want a team that has a lot of transfers. FSU is your team. They are the new transfer U. They have no less, I think it was 9 or 10 guys, including former UCF quarterback Mackenzie Milton, will make their debut for the Seminoles this fall. Now, Florida State needs some help. They finished 12th and 13th in the ACC in scoring offense and defense last season, and it was a horrible year for them. Horrible. So their Coach Norvell is going to have to try to get them off the mat, and he's using the transfer portal to do it. How will those transfer portals folks help out this Florida State team? That's going to be the big thing there. Duke. I look at Duke, and they were a team that were 2-9 last year, head into a 3rd straight season with a different quarterback. Man, it's just going to be kind of a tough road for Duke this year. David Cutcliffe did hire Ole Miss tight ends coach Calvin McGee. He oversees the running backs. Mateo Durant returns, averaged 6.8 yards a carry. We'll see how that works out for Duke. And then finally, Syracuse is 1-10. Dino Babers is, in a COVID year, you go 1-10. They just look like they were just battling the COVID all season. Their quarterback, Tommy DeVito, had some injuries. I don't know what to expect from Syracuse, but it's almost like a complete whitewash is what they need up there. Where you have like the old fence and you just paint it white to get rid of all the nicks and dents and stuff that are in it. That's kind of what they need up there at Syracuse. All right, finally, Clemson. Clemson comes into the season after they were 10-2 last year, couple of losses. The big question obviously is replacing Trevor Lawrence, replacing Travis Etienne. It's a big deal for anyone. I know that Clemson has DJ was great. Justin Ross coming back, that's going to be great. So the questions are going to be on the offense, but they shouldn't be on the defense this year. Now, I know they got lit up against Ohio State, but last season they tied for number 1 in the country in sacks, second in tackles behind the line of scrimmage. They return the players accounting for 45 of those sacks and 105 of those tackles for loss. They return every player responsible for the 14 interceptions. So they are going to be a seasoned team. That's what the way this Clemson defense is going to be. The question is, and I know people are big on DJ at quarterback, and he can be great, but it's going to be, will the offense be able to take hold? Off the phones we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rundown.
Hey, Rob, you want to know something else that's great?
What's that?
Like Tony the Tiger great?
Yeah.
I will not be calling Lawton's show for a whole till September.
Why is that?
Well, I granted his wish.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. I gave him an ultimatum. I said, you want me to participate or not? And he said no. So I said, okay.
Well, you and Lawton got to patch things up, man. You Tigers got to stick together, man. Y'all got to stick together, man. Patch it up.
We got to stick together, and that's what I'm doing. I'm granting his wish. So that's cooperating. Yes, you're right. Sticking together.
All right, man.
Hey, man. Hey, what did you think about that Super Bowl, brother? Was the officiating totally terrible or what?
No. I think that
it was not terrible.
No, I think that both teams play with the same officials. Man, if you listen to the show, I don't blame officials for that stuff. The officials don't get up in the middle of the day and say, you know what? I'm going to screw up the Super Bowl. They didn't go in there doing that.
It was so obvious the TV announcers were talking about it.
Yeah, well, what do TV announcers know? They didn't. I mean, Tony Romo didn't make it to the Super Bowl, so what does he know?
Don't be hating on Romo. Fallen stars, Cowboys.
Yeah, I know, right?
Later, man.
All right, brother. There we go. People get upset with me when I say that. I don't blame the officials for anything. Just let it go, man. Both teams play with the same officials. All right. Speaking of Walton Swan, he's up next with Clemson Sports Talk. He is the czar of Clemson sports. Be sure to check out his program on the vast Clemson Sports Talk Radio Network.
Stop looking at
yes,
me, Swan.
There it is. He will join you this afternoon from 4 to 6. My name is Rob Sanders. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Rob Sounds Good. Also, you can find me on Facebook as well. Appreciate the folks over on YouTube and, of course, the Fox Sports Radio Facebook page and on Twitter via Periscope. Thanks for checking the show out. Tomorrow, we'll have some more college basketball talk. We'll talk about South Carolina. Will they pick up the win tonight over Alabama, the number 11 team in the country? That would be that would be what South Carolina would do, right? After falling down at Mississippi State or with Mississippi State. That'll probably be what would happen. We'll have to see how that works. All right. So, as I said, podcast up at 5 o'clock today. And, of course, read my blog page. It's at foxsportsradio1400.com. Once again, thanks so much for listening to The Rundown. My name is Rob Sanders. We'll be back at it tomorrow on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Appreciate you guys, man. See you later.